Hi, gang. We're going to try to finish up everything for assignment number 5 here with this video right now. So, as I mentioned to you before in class, and particularly my database courses, it's crucially important if you have the luxury of an ERD at your disposal, always to have that opened up on your desktop. And if you have the luxury of a multiple monitor system, you could have it pushed off to one side so you can refer back to that when writing any SQL or any code for your web application or any other type of client server application. But it's vitally important that you have that because it just makes uh, seeing the context of the relationship between the tables in that database so much more easier to um, so much more easy to uh, get a grasp on the relationships and how the tables interact with each other, the attributes, the data types. You can actually, in MySQL Workbench, you can actually open it up, as you know, right-click on it, open up a new tab, and see the inserts as well too, the values that you provided. It just makes the development so much simpler than just running SQL and doing everything from the command line, right? We'd have to do that, like for instance, here I did show tables, right? Describe um, customer, okay? Or here I'll put describe pet, just so that you could see. The MUL in MySQL stands for the foreign key. So here we see that we have the foreign key, PSTID, CUSID, but looking at it from here, from MySQL Workbench, if you're familiar with the interface itself, you could see that the magenta colored items here in PET indicate that it's a foreign key. And we know that if it's solid, that it cannot be null, and if it's not solid, just outlined like CUSID here, that it can be null. It's a foreign key that can be null. Okay, enough of that. I just wanted to make sure that you realize that it's so crucially important for you to have the ERD open. And if you don't have a multiple monitor system, what you can do is just print it out, put it, somewhere on your desktop so that you can refer back to that as a visual guide to the actual data repository. You could do that the same way if it is a text file or a NoSQL non-relational data repository. Doesn't matter. You want to have some visual um, representation of that data so that you can understand how it needs to interact with the actual application. All right, I'm going to close out of this right now. And in a prior video, I demonstrated that you always want to make sure that when you're populating your database, that you don't go by the web application. You don't take for granted that everything is working just as it should be because the web application indicates that you just uh, inserted, updated, or deleted a record. Never take for granted that the web application is actually interacting with the data repository. I'm going to show this right now. So here, always make sure you have the actual data repository open. You could do this in MySQL as well. I'm sorry, Workbench as well too, but I'm going to do it through the command line. You guys, our employers, the employ you guys, the employers that come here and give presentations and interview you and hire you are requesting that you learn more command line operations. So I want to focus more on that in my classes. Not only just straight SQL, but also Unix commands as well too. So anyway, I'm going to do select all from customer. Okay, and we see we have 5 records. Now, prior video, I did show you that we inserted 1 record and we went back in here and it showed the 6th record. And now what I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just pre-populated here to save some time. Notes has the HTML tags there, so we could show that we're preventing cross-site scripting, and then we submit it. All right, so it's not interpreting the HTML, so the cross-site scripting is working. It says, thanks for joining our customer list. We just added John Doe. All right, or did we? Did we add a John Doe record? The only way to make sure that you're actually interacting with either you or the user or some type of end user uh, is or customer, whomever has access to the web application, is to go into the data store and to find out if something has been modified. So I'm going to do a select all again after I tried to insert a record. When I do select all, you'll notice that there's still 5 here. There's still 5 records. Why is that? Now, what you have to do is, one, go to the um, uh, terminal or command line. I'll go back to that here in a second and see if there's any problems with the actual Tomcat. See if there's maybe some issue not connecting to a database. Don't see any problems here. So that's your first thing. What you want to do is go to the running Tomcat command prompt if you're in Windows, or terminal if you're on Mac, and it would show possibly some errors here, but it's not. And now what we're going to do is go through the next steps of assignment number 5 and show you how to interact with the database, and then show you that there was only one line of code that didn't create an error, but still prevented you or prevented the user from actually interacting with the database itself. In other words, didn't insert a record. All right, gang. So at this point, what I want to do is go here to your LIS4368, go to web-inf, go to classes, go to CRUD, and go to the package. And you know now package is just a similarly organized set of classes that you would put your classes in. So in admin, we have customer servlet, and I have some other files there as well too for testing purposes. And business, we have customer, and in data, we have actually 3 files here. And I'm going to delete these classes because we don't need them right now. We can recompile those classes. I just want you to see the Java files. So it's connectionpool.java. Let me open this up into a new window so that you can see these. So I want to make sure that you see the names. So it's connectionpool.java. You're actually going to be creating these here right now. So I want to make sure that you get the names right, because it's important that they're spelled with case-sensitive spelling. Because if you don't spell them right, they're not going to compile. And then let me do this one as well and paste this in here. And what I'm going to do then is make it larger so that you could see these names. Okay, so it's connectionpool.java, customerdb.java, and dbutil.java, standing for database utilities. Customer pool, the C and the P are capitalized. The C in connection and the P in pool are capitalized. Customer DB, the C is capitalized, and DB, the letters DB are capitalized, okay? And then dbutil, the DBU, all 3 of those letters are capitalized, okay? Now, truthfully, if you made the class internally in the code different, spelled differently, you wouldn't have to capitalize it like this, but that's just a convention that I'm using. And by the way, that's the Pascal convention, if you will, that the first letter of each word is capitalized. Here, I took a little liberty in the D and the B both being capitalized because it stands for database, and then DB utility, database utility. So each one of these is capitalized, and that has to reflect internally in the code as well too. Okay, so those are the names of the three files. You will be coding these. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the easiest one first. So again, gang, the packages are just a way of organizing classes by groups. That's all it is. So the first thing that you're going to do, I'm going to close out of this. The first thing you're going to do is create a package. Just right-click on in the CRUD subdirectory there in CRUD. Right-click in there and just create a new folder and name it data. So here I'm just going to create folder. I'll call it data2. Okay, has to be lowercase. Okay, but I'm going to call that data2. But you're going to call yours just data. Okay, I'm going to delete that, and there is your data subdirectory. All right. Now, inside of data subdirectory, you're going to create three files. You can do that right now, the names I just provided for you. You don't have to add any code in it. Right now, just create those three files, connectionpool.java, customerdb.java, and dbutil.java. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up dbutil, because that's going to be the easiest one here. And then just to show you that it's really just a set of utility methods to do some database cleanup. Okay, that's all it is. So what it does is that it will clean up any resources associated with the database. Here is the 30,000 foot view of the entire file itself. Now remember, gang, with you have to know the convention of Java and the Java naming convention, right? So all these files reside inside of the package called data. But remember, everything in Java for classes begins in web-inf. That's the built-in subdirectory that we're given. And then here inside of classes, okay, which is another subdirectory by convention, then you could put all your packages in here. And we said that we're going to put all our packages associated with LIS4368 in one package called CRUD for create, read, update, and delete, right? Because we're creating a CRUD web application, all right? Then inside of there, we're going to have sub packages, admin, business, and data. Now, that's why we have this initial line 1, indicating that this file is located in the package starting from classes. So starting from classes, here's classes, we go into CRUD, and then data. And that's where this file, dbutil, can be found. And there it is. So starting from classes, we go to crud.data, and then that's where this particular file can be found. Okay? So the only thing that can be above that package statement are comments. Nothing else can be above that by Java's requirements. So the first line of code has to indicate that this file resides in a particular package, if it does, in fact. Now, could we do something like this? Could we put all of these? So we got CRUD, we have in admin, we have our servlet, right? In business, we have our customer, the model, and in data, we have 3 files. Could we just like skip all this and put everything inside of classes? Sure, we could. We could have 250 classes inside of classes. It wouldn't be a good way to organize your classes. So I'm just showing you one method of organization. And that's to just organize your files so that you can pull them out when needed with whatever particular application is you're using. So you don't have to sift through all your files. You know exactly which ones are associated with which applications. And for ours, it's in CRUD, and then we have sub packages with inside CRUD. All right, so that's that aspect of it. Now, the next thing, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller just so you can see the 30,000 foot view of what else is required here. So we have our package statement indicating where this file can be found. We have our import here and saying that we're going to be doing, let me make this a little bit larger. We're importing the java.sql.asterisk, all the classes inside of the SQL package. And so we're going to import that on line 3. And then the following here, I just got some comments here, just really to do some database cleanup, to close the statement, close the prepared statement, and close the result set. Now, truthfully, what you could do to make your life easy is just copy one of these like that. So write this out as is, make sure all the curly brackets are there, okay? And you have your try clause, your catch clause. If there's an error, it's going to print it out. You'll notice that this method is a void method. It's called close statement. It accepts one parameter, and that parameter is a variable. It's a statement parameter, and we just say give it a variable name called s. Okay, so we're instantiating a statement, and then we're saying it's going to be associated with the variable s, and then if it is open, in other words, if it's not null, then it must be open. We're going to then close it. Okay, so we're going to do that for the statement. Copy that. We're going to do the same thing, and then you could paste it 2 more times and just make some small changes. So once you do this one, just copy that and paste it 2 more times. Now you're going to have to make subtle changes. So instead of a statement, you paste this 2 more times, and now you got a closed prepared statement. But we're still using here the statement object. So here's a closed statement. Here's a prepared statement. We're using the statement class again, and we're passing a prepared statement. And we're saying if this prepared statement is open, then close it. And so again, we pasted that, and we pasted it again 1 more time, but this is for a result set. Now this is a little bit different because instead of a statement, it's a result set. So we say result set rs, and then doing the same thing. If it's open, then we're going to close it. All right, gang, so there's the code for that. And I'll make it a little bit smaller so you can see all of it. And there it is. Okay, so the class, again, by convention, has to be named here on line 6 the same name as the file, right? So make sure it's capital D, capital B, capital U, till. And that is for the name of the file. All right, gang, that's that. And don't forget one last thing. You got to close this statement. So you have 52 lines of code here. There's spaces here, so it's not actually 52 lines. Again, if you want to make your life easy, just copy this and then paste it 2 more times, make some small changes. All right, gang, that's that. Next is going to be the connection pool. So I'm going to open up this connection pool. And gang, I'm not going to go get too stuck in the weeds on this. I'm just going to show you the code. You can code it. But you can find code like this pretty much as is or very similar to it online. Actually, your book has an example of this as well too. And I'm just going to show this and go over it rather succinctly. Let me put this, make it a little bit larger. Let me just go over some of the comments here, and then I'm going to take the comments out, show just the code so that you don't have to code the comments. You can if you want to, but here are the comments right here. And I go into this just to say, whoa, what's a connection pool? Well, gang, for one, if your web app is going to be used by a number of different users and it's highly trafficked, you want to make sure that you're doing connection pooling. And this is not something specific to just Java. Other coding environments use connection pooling as well too, because actually invoking a connection to a database is actually resource intensive. So what we want to do is, if we can keep this connection open, and when we close a connection, we're actually just doing a pseudo close, if you will. We're not actually closing the connection, but we're keeping it open so that we're not fully closing it, if you will. We're keeping it open so that other users or clients requesting connection can have it running in the background there. So it's not actually closed from a cold close and then a fresh open again, because again, that's pretty resource intensive. So some notes over here. Connection pools improve database connection performance as well as the associated execution of commands on a database. It facilitates reuse of the same connection object rather than opening and closing many connections. And again, that's just to serve a number of client requests if the web application is being used by many users. A couple things here when we talk about the IC lookup or the initial context lookup. This is something that has to do with the Java API and what's known as the JIND interface, if you will, Java naming and directory interface. And again, it's just a Java API, and that is reflected here starting in Tomcat 4. Remember, we had to make some, when we first did our development environment, we had to do a couple things, a couple modifications. One was to the server.xml file. Remember, we did that. We modified that at the very beginning of assignment number 1. We modified the server.xml file. We also modified the web.xml file as well too. You can refer back to assignment number 1 and that. But I also have here, as far as how JIND resources work, you can see this line 31 and refer to this HTML file, the documentation for Tomcat, on how the JIND interface or the API works, and then you can use that for further clarification. But simply, I just want to say that it begins with this. So Java:/comp/env for environment. So how that works is in your context.xml file, okay, and that's in meta-inf. I have this open right here. This is your context.xml file, and that is located right here, meta-inf. There's your context.xml. We modified this already in an earlier video in assignment number 4. We modified this. But I just want to say that here is the context.xml. This is the path. Remember, real quickly, everything starts from web apps in Tomcat here, and from there we go into our other applications. What other applications do you have in web apps? Well, here we're saying that this is going to be the context for our application is going to be inside of web apps, and inside of web apps is going to be 4368. Okay, fine. But what we're worried about right now are 2 lines. Well, actually not 2 lines, there's more than that, but one is the URL, in other words, the direct access to our resource. Now, the resource is localhost because we have AMP's running in the background, which is also running MySQL. Now I have port 3308. Again, gang, don't use this code. We already did this before, so don't modify anything. We already set up your context.xml. Use the code that you used before. This is mine, so don't use that code there. And I just put some dummy values in here so that you could take a look at this. Now, the database is MJOET. The port that I'm using is 3308. Yours is going to be 3306. Your database is going to be your FSU ID, not mine. Okay, and again, we already did this, so don't worry about this. And then that would be for to suppress any SSL warnings. Here, we talked about a number of these different attributes, but the most important thing here is the name here. This is for the JINDI naming convention. And that's JDBC MJOET. And I'm also used some other dummy values here for the username, of course, is MJOET. And then I got a dummy password here that I'm using. But the name here is how we're going to refer to this in our file that I'm going to show here in a second. So just remember this, the name JDBC/MJOET. Okay, fine. So that's line 40. I'm going to close out of that. Now, when we go into this connection pool here, remember that everything's going to start in your initial context lookup from Java :comp/comp/env. Then from there, the name is going to be that name that you got from the context.xml file. And that name is JDBC, your FSU ID. So, with that said, this is where your IC lookup should be, right here. Java :comp/comp/env/JDBC/MJOET. And again, that comes from the context.xml file. Now, what I'm going to do is take out these comments and make it look this easier for you to code. All right, so first line, where does this connection pool.java file reside? It resides inside of, as I mentioned to you before, inside of data. Okay, so inside of data, as I indicated here, right, inside of data is where all three of these files are actually. Okay, don't worry about this. This indicates an Emacs that this file's opened right now. But these files right here, the Java files, connection pool, customer DB, and DBUtil. All right. So there's our package. Here's our import statements that we need. And again, gang, don't get too worried about this. You can find how to write a connection pool class based upon that link that I provided for you in the notes here that I just took out to make it look to make it easier to read, just the code, or your textbook as well too. But these are the import statements, and now we actually start the class itself. So everything, I'm going to make this real small so you can see the entire class, and then I'll make it bigger. This is the entire class right here. Okay? And now I'm going to make it larger just so that you can see the code here. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure we have two static data members, one for the connection pool and the data source. We're just going to call those variables pool and data source. Okay, so here are the actual variable names. And we're going to set them initially to null. Okay, and we're going to use these class variables in each one of our methods. The first method is a special method. Remember that this name of this file is connection pool. And if there's a method that has the same name as the file, that means it must be a constructor. And in fact, this is what this is. This is a default constructor, and it's a special type of method in Java. We're saying it's private, it's a constructor, and it's going to contain our initial context. So we're going to try this. We're going to try to make contact with the database, and if there's an error, we're going to print that error out. Okay, so first thing you need to do is write this constructor. Next is this line right here, and that is, there's actually 4 methods, you guys. One is a special method called the constructor. The next is the connection pool, and this is for to do safe threading. So in a multi-threaded environment, this synchronized get instance method is going to provide us thread safe user interaction, and you could learn more about being thread safe with database and web applications just by doing a quick internet search. But this is going to provide that functionality for thread safety. And so we're using the synchronize command here. The next method is we're going to get a connection, and then finally we're going to free the connection, and that ends on line 57. Line 58 ends the class. That curly bracket ends the class. So again, in review, there's our package, there's our import statements. Here begins the class called connection pool, same name as a file. Here's our 2 private static class members. You want to call them class variables, and they're static. That means that they don't have to be, the class does not have to be instantiated with this, or I should say a class doesn't have to be, an object doesn't have to be initialized, instantiated. This can work without objects. That's why they're static. The first method is a constructor called connection pool. Make sure, gang, you don't put my FSU ID here. It has to be your FSU ID. Okay, so please be cognizant of that. Everything else should be the same. So again, here's the constructor. Pause it. Here's the method, or for the get instance method. Again, this is to allow safe threaded preventing any issues that would have with multi-threading. So this is going to give us a thread safe environment. We got the get connection method right here, a try and a catch, and then finally the free connection method, and that's going to free the connection. The only one that doesn't have a catch block, and let me make this a little bit maybe easier to see like that. There we go. I think that's a little bit easier to see. Okay, because you got the catch block that's on its own lines there. The only one that doesn't have a catch block is the synchronized get instance method. All we're doing is creating a new connection pool and then returning that. Once we do that, we return that pool object to our connection pool. Again, it's going to give us provide us a thread safe environment. All right, what I'm going to do is put the comments back here, and I did, and I'm going to then put that, save that. Again, I got my comments here, so don't forget this last curly bracket. You're not going to have 87 lines of code unless you include these comments. You should only have 52. Okay, but don't forget that last curly bracket right here, line 52. Your line 52. All right, I'm going to save that, close out of this, and then finally, the last one is the customer DB. Now the customer DB is going to be this. Okay, so here's our customer DB, and all right, there it is. And I'm just going to show the entire file, and then I'm going to make it larger. And I'm going to give you a couple of cautions here. First of all, I have some comments here on how to actually compile this, right? So first of all, you want to, just like instructions in the assignment document, right? Here's just saying, make sure you first CD to the class's subdirectory. That's the very first thing you do. You don't CD to the data directory. Okay, gang? Again, it's important you understand that. Don't CD here to the data directory to try to compile this. You want to CD to the classes directory. Why? Because once you do that, once you invoke this compile command here on line 5, it will do everything accordingly because of this package command here on line 13. Remember, each one of our files has a package command, and the only thing that can go above that package command are comments. That's the only reason I can write these comments. Here, I couldn't put any other command above the package command. So where does customer db.java reside? We're in this file right here, customer db.java. It resides inside of data. So there's our package command right here. Here's how we're going to compile all these files. We would do the same thing in using a Mac as well too. So we can compile them all at the same time. All right, now I'm going to scroll down here and just to show you without the comments, this is all the code that you need. Okay, here's all the code. So without the comments, this is it right here. Now, I'm going to draw your attention. I'm going to make this a little bit larger and go in chunks here. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is lines 30 and 31. Gang, make sure that you have a space right here before the quotation mark. I'm going to make this larger so you can see this. Okay, look at the end here. Make sure you have this space. If you don't, if you have the quotation mark without the space, everything is going to compile perfectly, but it will not run because what's happening here, this query variable is going to run up everything together. Look at line 31. There is no space after the quotation mark. And so it's going to bunch this line up together, the insert line up together with the values line, and like it was regular SQL. So it would do something like this, just to let me show you what it would do, what it would look like if it was actual SQL. And instead of a string variable, it would look like this. I'm going to paste this in here, and to show you what it would look like and why there would be an error, you can see that my Emacs needs to be benchmarked here because I'm running so much stuff in here. What it would look like, gang, is this. It would be bunched together like this. See how the insert statement runs right, or I should say the values clause of that insert statement runs right after that parenthesis? This would not work. If it was run in a SQL parser, it would not work. Okay, so I'm going to close out of that. So again, just realize you could do this one of two ways. You could actually put the space here on line 31 right here, or you could put it right before that double quotation mark at the end of line 30, or you could put them both. Doesn't matter because remember, SQL is white space insensitive, right? It doesn't worry about the white space, but you have to have at least one white space. Okay, so have it here or before values or both. Doesn't, but have it somewhere. And I'm going to do mine. I'm going to have mine right after the um, insert and just before the uh, double quotation mark. All right, so there's my comments. Here's the package. Here are the two import statements. We're going to import the SQL.asterisk. We're using an array list. We're going to import that. And the array list, there's a subtle difference between an array and array list. A couple things, gang. An array list, number one, can only work with objects. It cannot work with primitive data types like int or long or byte. It works with objects, but it's also dynamic, so that we can add or delete elements from an array list. We can't do that with an array. An array is fixed length, and an array list is dynamic. And that's important because we're going to be adding and removing customers. Okay, here's our class. Also don't forget, what we need to do is pull in a customer object. So we need the customer class. So we're importing our user-defined class that we created, customer. Remember, we did that in assignment number 4. And now we're creating the customer DB class. So here's the class itself. Let me see if I can get everything. Yes, I can, right there. Okay, this is everything with that class. Okay, so you can pause that. Don't forget line 60. A couple things here, gang. What normally in SQL you would put values in here, right? Like, so insert, we will put here, oh, I don't know. Let me do this back again like this. We put an actual value. So for the customer F name, we would put a hard-coded value, say John, right? Okay, and then we do the same thing for each one of those arguments. We'd put doe, street, city, state, zip, etc., right? What we're doing here is we're preventing SQL injection, okay? And how this works is, and by the way, this method is called an insert method. So in project 2, we're going to have a number of other methods that we're going to be using as well too. But for just assignment 5, all we're doing for this customer class is creating an insert method because we're going to add a customer. Then we're creating a connection pool object. We're establishing a connection, and then here is when we start our we'll call the prepared statement. Now what this does is these are what's known as anonymous placeholders. So the question marks are anonymous placeholders. And unfortunately, Java doesn't allow us to use named placeholders like we could in PHP. So in PHP, if you're familiar with that, we would use a name placeholder like colon and then give it a name like colon F name, colon L name, colon street, and it makes it a lot easier, right? Now, we could use anonymous placeholders in PHP too, just like this with the question marks. And if you had me in the PHP course, I discourage you from doing that because look how much more difficult it is. If you added something to this, then you would have to add another question mark and make sure that you're counting these correctly, right? So what you have to do is count to make sure that the attributes in the database, cus F name, cus L name, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, and then here is 1, 2, whoops, 1, well, I missed one, didn't I? Customer F name 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm sorry, there's 11 here. So if you want to count them yourself, you can do that. But there's actually 11 attributes. So what I have to do, I have to make sure I have 11 placeholders, 11 anonymous placeholders. And this sets up the prepared statement because all it's doing, it's not passing any data over any raw data over a connection. And this prevents SQL injection. What we're doing is we're preparing that statement, and then after that statement is prepared, when the user submits in the form the actual data, so we're preparing that statement, and then all we're doing is then passing arguments to the prepared statement. So here we're using this variable query. We're going to create a prepared statement in the try block, and then all we're passing are those anonymous placeholders, and then after that we're going to capture from our customer object the F name, L name, street city from those get methods. We're going to capture all the data that the user entered, and then we're going to pass those separately. Now, the one thing that takeaway is important. Make sure you count the number of attributes that you're using in a particular table. Make sure that the anonymous placeholders match. So 11 attributes, 11 question marks, and there's no comma after that last one. Make sure there's no comma there. And then make sure you create your prepared statement, and then there has to be matching 11 values to be passed to those placeholders. Then we use the execute update method, which is a built-in method in Java for JDBC, Java Database Connectivity. We're going to use the same method for our update and delete in Project 2. We're going to use the catch if there's a problem. And then we're going to use a finally. This finally clause here is to do any closing of connections if necessary. We're going to make sure that everything is cleaned up so all our open connection resources are all closed, and we don't leave anything open. So gang, again, here is our class customer DB. Okay, so that's that. Make this a little bit smaller again so you can see the entire file, including comments, which you don't have to have. All right, that's that. And I'm going to save this because I made some modifications to it. So save that. Oops. Yeah, let me save that. I want to make sure I have that space here. Remember I talked about that space in the insert. I'm at the very end here. I got to make sure I have that. Otherwise I'd have an error, and I do have it right there. So I'm going to save this. And then what I'm going to do is close out of it. Don't need it open anymore. And then finally, I'm going to go to the servlet. Now, there's only two things that you have to do here. Here's the servlet, okay? Here's the servlet that you had finished in assignment number 4. There's only two things that you need to do. Number one, I'm going to make this larger so you can see it. Number one, uncomment. You'll have this. After you've finished assignment number 4 and you did it correctly, you'll have line, well, I'm not sure what line it is, but you have this line right here to the customer DB file commented. The reason why we had to do that is because we didn't have a customer DB class. But now we have to uncomment it because we're going to use it. Okay? So uncomment that. And there's only one more thing that you have to do. And let me show you why it didn't work before. Remember when we went in here and we saw that it didn't actually insert a record for us? Well, why is that? The reason why, gang, is because of this. We had line, now I'm not sure what line yours is, but it's inside of your add customer call. So else if action.equals add customer, go down inside of that code and go to this line. It's my line 132, and you have to uncomment this. So uncomment that, save this, just like that. And now all you have to do is recompile this. So I'm going to go here, and there's a couple tricks here. So you see none of these are compiled. I'm going to go to admin. I'm going to delete this customer class. Okay. I'm going to go to data. I'm going to I'm going to go to business. I'm going to delete my customer class. And then I want to show you a trick. Okay. In the file here, in your homework, it says to, and you can do it like this too, and it will work. Look at the line here on number 3. So what you want to do is you can compile all your Java files like this. Make sure that you start in classes like that. So let's do that. I'm in classes, and I'm going to run this code. Okay, so let me just do this. Let me copy this line like this, paste it like that. And do I have any errors? No errors. That's a good thing. So let me go to my Java, see if everything compiled, and it did. You see my class here for connection pool, my class for connection customer DB, and my class for DB util. All right. Now, the other thing that you have to do is compile. Now, you don't have to compile your customer.java because you already have it compiled. So there's nothing you need to do from assignment number 4, right? But what I do want to show you is this, that you want to compile your servlet. So remember, again, gang, wherever your servlet API is, mine is in this path. Yours is no doubt going to be somewhere different. So make sure it matches your path to your servlet-api.jar file. And so what I'm going to do is just compile this like this. Okay? And then I'm going to do this. See if it compiles correctly. Is there any errors? It looks like it compiled correctly. And let's see if it did. There it is. There's my class. Now, I want to show you something. I'm going to delete this class, the servlet, customer servlet dot class. Delete that. That's our in the MVC architecture. That's actually the controller, right? In the business model, the customer, I'm going to delete that, right? Even though you already compiled this in assignment number 4. And then finally in the data, I'm going to delete all these classes. So I'm going to delete the connection pool, I'm going to delete the customer DB, I'm going to delete DB utils. So I don't have any of these classes compiled. Now I want to show you something. Truthfully, all you have to do is compile the servlet. So if everything is coded properly, you don't have to invoke this command here to compile all the Java files inside of data, or compile your customer class inside of the inside of business. You don't have to compile this customer class. Watch what happens. All you have to do is compile the servlet. Just run this command right here, making sure that your servlet API file is in the correct path. Run this command, and all of your other files will compile. So it's a fast way of compiling all the files associated with this application. Why? Because all of the other files, remember, have those packages and are calling other files inside. So if we look at, for instance, our customer servlet, it's calling, in line 27, it's calling the customer class. And it's also calling customer DB. Well, in my customer DB class, it's calling util and it's calling the customer pool. So all of these classes are interacting with each other and calling other classes. So what it will do is automatically compile them. So All I have to do is compile this servlet like this. Again, watch. None of these files are compiled. I'm just going to compile this servlet, customer servlet. If everything is coded correctly, watch what will happen. Customer servlet is compiled, no errors. Notice that all my classes inside of data are compiled. Notice in business, the customer class is now compiled, and also notice in admin that my servlet is compiled. All right, gang, that's it for the development here for assignment number 5. Now all we have to do is just verify that everything is working. We go in here, back here, everything is populated. I'm going to submit this. Shoot, why is that happening? Well, if we remember, the servlet wasn't compiled before. So what we need to do is start up and then shut down the server. So I'm going to shut this down. Okay, I'm going to start it up. See if there's any errors. So far, so good. It looks like it's working correctly. I don't see any errors here. And let me go back to the application. Let me go back, hit the back arrow. Let me submit what I have right now. And it works. It prevents the cross-site scripting. The prepared statement is preventing SQL injection. And lastly, the last thing we have to check, are we actually having data inserted into the data repository? Let's do a select all now on customer. And in fact, it is working. Gang, it was that one line in our customer servlet that was missing that now it is working. All right, gang, that's everything for assignment number 5. See you all in class.